once upon a time known as PulseEffects back when it used Pulse Audio and GTK3, then changing its name to EasyEffects when it started using GStreamer and GTK4, then replacing GStreamer with native Pipewire plugins. EasyEffects is a really popular application for basically applying audio effects to your input and output devices, so your speakers and microphones, basically. There are other devices, but that's for the most part. Things like noise suppression, gain, audio balancing, echo, EQ, various other effects you might want to apply to an audio stream or an audio device. Now, my installation looks a little bit different. Everything seems to be in roughly the same place, but this is not GTK, let alone GTK4. And that is for a very good reason, because it's not GTK4, it's not Libadwaita. It has done another major shift, moving from the GNOME ecosystem to Qt, QML, and the Kirigami framework from KDE. And here we have a much more favorable demonstration. On the left is the old GTK4 and Libadwaita version, on the right is the Qt and Kirigami version. And look, I know UI frameworks are a very debatable thing, especially in the Linux space, and especially when we're talking about GTK versus Qt. This is not like, oh, a modern thing people argue about. This has been a generational argument. I am going to admit I am a completely biased source. Just putting that out there. If you want an unbiased take, I am not the person to go to. I prefer the look of the new version. I think it makes a much better use of space, a much better use of color, it's much clearer the separation between UI elements, and it's a KDE app, so it's also themable, so if you don't like the look of the application, you know, it fits in with the whole KDE ecosystem of doing that. The old one, well, there are ways to theme Libadwaita applications, but it's a much more involved process. It's something most people don't do. It's usually something done at the distribution level. Now, I also want to be clear, because I know someone's going to point this out, neither of these apps actually follow the HIG, the Human Interface Guidelines, for either of their respective desktops. This is not a HIG compliant GNOME application. This is not a KDE HIG compliant application. The dev is fully aware of that. Just putting that out there before anybody complains. This comes in with a release of version 8.0.0. Now, on Arch Linux, as of the recording of this is still in the testing repos. I can't speak for other distros. I would assume for the slower rolling LTS style things, you're going to be obviously waiting quite a while for this, which, depending on whether you're on something like an Ubuntu or a Kubuntu, might be a good or a bad thing. So, here is the changelog. Obviously, not everything here is relevant to the actual update, because there's about 4 months between releases, so a bunch of other things also changed as well. This is our first release using a combination of Qt, QML, and Kirigami instead of GTK4. As a result, our graphical interface went through major changes. Also, as a result, it still needs some work. I already mentioned the stuff with the KDE HIG. You don't need to follow that, but there's just sensible design guidelines in there to make your app, you know, just look better and feel better. I also would like to see some padding around some of these buttons. I don't particularly like the power icon here. It is functional, but it kind of feels like it stands out way too much against the others. Same with this excluded apps down here. I didn't even realize that was there when I first started using the application. This doesn't look like a button. If it's gonna be a button, it probably should be styled like a button, but those are just things I kind of immediately noticed. I'm sure if you go and actively use the application, there's gonna be some other stuff which stands out. I know people have talked about this menu here. It kind of feels like a completely different styling to the rest of the application. That's probably something that also should be worked on as well. And you couldn't see it because of my camera, but they also have a tray icon now. It is a little bit funky sometimes. It's working now, but the first couple of times I clicked it, because of this text that was expanding outside the box, it was weirdly being cut off. So I don't know why that happens, or how that happens, or why it stopped happening, but it is still a little bit buggy. Maybe it's a thing with not being on KDE. Very possibly. Maybe it's a waybar problem. Who knows? Among other things, the tray menu icon shows a list of most used input and output presets. Our window is now more friendly to small screens. As a result, is friendlier than before to tiling window managers too. This is a problem that most Libadwaita apps have. They seem to be designed around a full screen use case, or basically full screen. If you try to use a lot of them in tiles, you sometimes can, but a lot of the times it's going to behave a bit weirdly. A lot of the times apps are going to have really large minimum sizes, and it's going to be a bit awkward. Not all apps, definitely not all, but a lot of the time this is the case. Especially in cases where it doesn't need to be like that. Some, if not most of the changes here aren't really relevant to the UI change, so yeah. This one kind of is. The previous global bypass button is now exposed as a traditional on-off button. You could have done that in Libadwaita, but it's a nice change to make anyway. And this is what happens when you have both a UI change and 4 months of changes in the same update. If I was writing the change notes myself, I would have had the Qt specific stuff as its own section. That's just how I would do it. Not a big deal. Most people don't really read changelogs anyway. On the note of things that aren't really relevant, but are kind of relevant, we added more local shortcuts, as well as the support for the XDG Global Shortcuts portal. At the moment, if the Wailing compositor correctly implements the protocol, the global effects on-off and the microphone monitor can be toggled when the window is hidden, and EasyEffects is run as a background service. The reason why I say this is kind of relevant is under the other notes section. At this moment, XDG Global Shortcuts are working well on KDE. Not so much on GNOME, and maybe other desktops too. On GNOME in particular, the shortcut itself does work, but key binding customization seems to be properly implemented only by KDE. Other Whale implementations should be tested, and we invite users to let us know how it works. Now, considering Neri is using the GNOME portal, it's probably going to have similar problems. I couldn't tell you about places like Hyperland and whatever their portal is doing. I don't know if Hyperland even has this portal implemented, but it should be working, assuming either the portals are being implemented correctly, or this app is doing something weird that is maybe exploiting a problem that KDE has, or you're doing stuff in a way that breaks. I don't know. There's clearly a reason why it's working on KDE and not GNOME, even though they both have the portal implemented. Moving to Qt from GTK 4 means that a lot has changed about our dependencies. So for any package builders or people that might want to build it on their system, there is the Arch Linux package build from the project. There is also a package available in Arch Linux testing, and I'm sure that everybody else that has a package is eventually gonna get up to speed with this. Also, not relevant to the UI change, but they are now following the XDG standard with their config files, so it should be working, but files may be in places that are not relevant to that, so if you want to make sure everything is following the standard, make sure files are in the new correct locations. At least right now, the old files are being copied to the new location, and then old directories are being moved to the trash. So if you're missing some stuff, that's the place to go. So when you update, don't empty your trash before checking that, if you desperately need something. Now, before we have a look at some of the reaction to this change, because ooh, there's been some juicy reaction. There is a lot of mixed opinions and a lot of very aggressive opinions about this. But first, let's have a look at the tracking issue. things to do for Qt port, done, obviously it's being released. We're not going to have a look at every comment here. Instead, I want to highlight a couple of notable ones. Firstly is right after this post. Is the GTK version going away, or is this just a separately maintained port? That's obviously a very important question because a lot of people really wanted the GTK version. The GTK version will be replaced by the one in the Qt branch. I don't think you can say it any clearer than this, but they had to ask again, is that you saying the GTK version is being killed? Yes. I do not have time to maintain both branches. If somebody wanted to go and fork it, they could go and do so. I do believe the second largest contributor on the project actually is a GNOME user. So this isn't like a person who's using KDE that is then saying, oh, throw everything away. This is the main developer and the second largest developer basically saying, yeah, this is gonna make things easier. Obviously, this is the main dev. This is the guy who made the project. So he is the final call. But it's not something where he was just upending everything and nobody else involved had any idea. On a personal level, I am not pleased by the direction things went on GTK's side, so even if I had the time, the desire to keep coding with GTK is gone. Now, if you're ever bored and want to kill some time, have a listen to this LinuxConf AU talk from 2014, GTK to Qt. This is a talk from Dirk Hondel, basically saying all of the reasons why he doesn't like GTK anymore and why Qt, at least for him, is a much better environment to program in. And even though it's 11 years old, I'll just leave it up to you guys to have a listen. Somewhere around the 6-minute mark is an interesting time. Also, regarding some of the effects, this isn't specifically Qt and GTK. Well, it's GTK, but not GTK4 related. Some people might notice that the Calf Studio plugin's native window is not being shown by EasyEffects anymore. This is because in Arch Linux, they disabled the native window because the native window is a GTK2 application. I actually talked about this over in my separate GTK2 video. This is something that is going to come around and bite that application really bad, and they've known about this problem for a very long time, and the devs are working on fixing the problem, but it's still a GTK2 application at the end of the day, and that's going to take a while to move it to something else. So just keep that in mind with any of the Calf-related plugins. Also, this isn't just a problem on Arch Linux, this is also going to be a problem on basically anything else, because basically everyone's dropped the GTK2 dependencies at this point, so either Calf is just not in the repos, or it's in the repos, and they drop the GUI. So you're in a fun situation either way. I think not having it be in the main repos is probably more consistent, just so it's not half working, you know it's entirely missing. If it's entirely missing, well, you know, okay, I need to make sure I have all of the dependencies for it. Now, post-release, some KDE people showed up to basically congratulate the developer. Apparently, it was featured in This Week in KDE Apps. This is not the one by Nate. This is the one by Carl Schwann. Right down the bottom here. Third-party applications, EasyEffects, audio effects for Pipewire applications. EasyEffects 8 was released and now uses Kirigami. Also inviting the contributors to join the Kirigami Matrix and the KDE Apps Initiative Matrix. The developer isn't, like, super commonly joining places like this, so isn't really, you know, understanding how Matrix works, but is willing to, you know, get involved and, you know, bring the application more in line with the HIG, saying, I have already noticed I'm not following HIG recommendations, like only using overlay sheets for long read-only information. But when I tried a dialogue in their place, the size of the header and overall appearance felt strange, so some input about the HIG would be good. Now that's it for the developers. Let's go over to Reddit. Oh, Reddit. So, back when this was first announced, this post was made over on r/GNOME. EasyEffects is leaving GNOME. Ooh. I was about to write a feature request and going through existing issues, noticed that EasyEffects is being ported to Qt. Sad face. Admittedly, this is not a good looking app anyway, fair enough, but it is really sad to see that it is going to be much worse now, at least on GNOME. I highly value good aesthetics, and it was already hard to tolerate this app, but it will definitely be in the find a replacement bin after this. I wonder if this person knows how many people feel the exact same way when it happens in the opposite direction. When an app they were using was on GTK 3 or something else, goes to Libadwaita, and then looks kinda rough on KDE. Here we have a perfect comment. Maybe a bit too aggressive, but again, it's Reddit. All the people complaining that it now looks out of place on their GNOME system now experience what everyone else that doesn't use GNOME experiences with a Libadwaita program. KDE tries to make GTK 2/3 programs match as much as possible, while GNOME doesn't care. GNOME also went out of their way to make theming a royal pain with GTK 4 and Libadwaita, specifically that combination. If you're just using GTK 4 by itself, it's basically as themable as GTK 3, but the majority of, at least on Linux, GTK, which the majority of the applications on GTK 4, they're going to be using Libadwaita as well. There's not really much of a reason to be building a GTK 4 application if you're not also building it as a GNOME application. Now, I will say that accent color theming is a thing that does exist, and there is some level of theming you can do with some various tools in Libadwaita. It's just not something openly exposed by the desktop. It's not something majority of people do. It's not something the majority of people even know is a thing that can be done, but it's not like you can't do anything, it's just not something that is readily available to the user, which makes sense with the whole stop theming apps thing. Also, if you want to be pedantic, there's technically a difference between a color scheme and a theme. A color scheme is taking existing UI elements and then recoloring them. A theme is taking those existing elements, recoloring them, but also bringing in new icons, bringing in new button shapes, changing padding, things like that. There is obviously quite a bit of feedback here. It's also actually kind of close to the number of upvotes, so there's a lot of angry people in this situation. This thread over here, I think, is so much more aggressive. Worst Linux app redesign of the year. This is on Linux for Noobs, so you get a lot of fun over on this one. Old GTK versus new Qt. So this is the old GTK, this is the new Qt. Also take note that they are running this on GNOME. Does anyone know why the EasyEffects devs decided to rebuild the app in Qt? As I explained earlier in the video, it's because the dev doesn't want to deal with GTK anymore. I don't mind Qt/KDE apps, but in my honest opinion, the app looks really bad now. Again, I disagree. I completely disagree. And also, it's themable. So, yeah. For some reason, there's a lot more upvotes here. I think it's just because it's negative and people want to be angry because it's Reddit. So, I'll leave both of these threads linked down below. But a lot of the feedback is kind of in a few clear-cut categories. Things like, it was bad before, and now it still looks bad. Sometimes better, sometimes worse, but a lot of people saying it still looks bad. And that's understandable. As I've discussed, the dev is actually working on improving it, is talking to KDE people, all this good stuff, and things are improving. Now, one person, as always is the case whenever the topic of Qt comes up, you always have at least someone who still thinks it's the 90s, and still thinks that, you know, Qt has a possibility of going proprietary, and is not something which, like, I don't, how is it that after, how many years has it been at this point? How do we still have people that still think that Qt is a ticking time bomb? Obviously, quite a few people don't care at all. You know, it's like, yeah, you know, I'm on GNOME, I prefer it to be this, but I'll still keep using it. Or, oh, I'm on KDE, it looks better for KDE, but I'm doesn't matter anyway. I don't have the window open all the time, right? Like, this isn't an application you're constantly, like, looking at. It's something where you set the thing and then just have it somewhere you're not going to see it. And then, this is why I love bringing up especially Reddit comments. You have comments like this. GTK 2 would have also been an upgrade, but good upgrade nonetheless. GTK 4 is really bad. I don't know if this is a troll post, but no, GTK 2 wouldn't have been an upgrade. However, the majority of people, as you can probably expect, aren't even talking about the application, especially on this thread, are just arguing about the merits of GTK versus Qt, arguing about the GNOME approach versus the KDE approach, and we don't even have to have EasyEffects here because they're not talking about the app. They're just talking about the frameworks. And this is one of those arguments that has been going on for basically as long as there's been Linux, right? Like, both KDE and GNOME are only a few years younger than Linux. And ever since they've both been around, ever since there's been GTK and Qt apps on Linux, this has been an argument, and it's an argument that is probably never going to end unless one of the frameworks dies. And even then, there's still going to be people talking about nostalgia. So I wish the dev the best of luck. I wish all of the contributors the best of luck. And yes, it's a bit of a rough initial version. I still think it looks good. A lot of people still think it looks good, but that doesn't mean it can't be made better, and I hope it is made better. So, if you've never used the application, now, at least if you have a package for the new version, is as good a time as any to check it out. I'll leave all the links in the description down below, so let me know your thoughts. Do you like it? Do you hate it? I'm obviously a biased source, and I'm sure a lot of you share similar biases, whether it be for or against it. Anyway, if you liked the video, go like the video. If you really liked the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon, subscribe to Daily Bearer Pay, linked in the description down below. That's going to be it for me, and I want to see more of this happen.